Hello. In the last part of larger forms, we are going to talk about rondo forms. In The Complete Musician by Stephen Leeds, there's a beautiful introduction. He says, variety is the spice of life, and there's no place like home. In the rondo structure, the A sections are our home, and the B and C section, or in this case, the contrasting sections between A sections, are varieties. The A sections are called refrains, and the contrasting sections between them are called episodes. We learned the ternary form. This is a 3-part structure. Then we have 5-part rondo form and 7-part rondo form. The ternary form is ABA. 5-part rondo form, as we saw in the previous slide, ABA, CA. This is like an addition to the ternary structure. And 7-part rondo has one more addition. This is one version, BA. This is a restatement of B. And another option is DA. In this case, D is another thematic section and it has another thematic material. We can think of rondo form as an extension of ternary form, or we can consider ternary as a small 3-part rondo. This is a more detailed diagram of rondo form. We have 5-part rondo. This is classic rondo. We have A, B, A, C, A. A section is always on tonic, and the B section in the secondary key. In major, it is on the dominant, and in minor, it would be relative major. So, and C section is not on tonic, also not on the dominant. It should be on another degree, in another key. There is a very rare, but really rare variant of 5-part rondo. This is basically a ternary form, like A, B, A. We can think of it that the second part, that this part is repeated, but the difference is B should be in another degree. For example, it could be on tonic. What if we have a BA, BA, tonic, dominant, tonic, tonic, tonic. In this case, we can say this is a repeated ternary. This is a variant of 5-part rondo then, but this is really rare. Then we have a 7-part rondo. You see A, B, A, C, A, B, A, the return of B. This is the most common variant. This could also be a D, but it is rare, because to accomplish the unity is more difficult with more parts. So add tonic, dominant, tonic. C should be in another degree because the tonic is associated with A and dominant is associated with B. And we have here B part again, and this is the sonata idea. This is the sonata principle. The B part, the return of B part, everything on the second half, let's say everything in the second half is on tonic. And C part is in another key other than dominant and tonic. And we have a special form, an interesting form called sonata rondo. This is actually a 7-part rondo. Everything is the same except C part is more elaborated. This is like a development. This is not only a section like A and B. This is broader. This is broader and more elaborated than the other sections. We will talk about this one in detail in the following slides. This is an example of 5-part rondo form. Let's examine the structure first. We have A part at the beginning as usual, and our key is G major. And you see it is labeled here B part. You may ask why B part? Why does B part begin in measure 17 and not in measure 9, for example? Because the first thing, the main contrasting element between A and B section is the key. The key has to be different, but if you look at this one, it looks maybe at the beginning a little contrasting. It is like D major, implied D major, but we will see at the end it returns back to G major. So we are on the same key here. And the structure of the A part is we can analyze it. This is a half cadence in G major or perfect authentic cadence in D major. It doesn't make any difference in this case because both means, let's say it is half cadence, both means a continuous structure. And then it begins on 5. Let's say it is a tonicization of 5 and it returns back to G major. So then we see the reprise signs. This is a 2 reprise. There is an A phrase and B phrase. That means this is a simple binary. 2 reprise continuous binary. So then the B section, the main contrasting element is key as always, and the B section is in E minor. You see this is E minor, you see D sharps, etc. This is the end of B section actually, and this is a transition, a preparation of the backcoming of A, and you see here comes A again, this time with a different accompaniment figure, but with the same harmony and without reprises. Actually, this is the end of the first section, of the first part of A, and then the second part, there should be a reprise. Most often, the reprise sign are left out within the movement. And then the second part is also not repeated. And then C part. C part is always the most contrasting part in the rondo structure. If you compare the A and B, you will see the same thematic or similar motivic material. This rhythmical material remains the same, and only the main contrasting element is the key. But if you compare the C section with the A, you will see that also the motivic material changed. And it is in C major, that means in the subdominant of G major. And here comes the A again. A, and it turns into a coda at the end. So 8 measure long, this is the first part of A section, and you see different figuration. Those are actually the variation of the first part. If you compare those one, G, B, you will see this is only a variation. That means instead of repeat sign here, Beethoven writes the first part again, this time with variation. And after that point, this is the second part of A. And the second part of A is with variation. And here should be a reprise sign actually. But instead of reprise sign, we think Beethoven writes the second part of A again, but he doesn't actually, because he repeated the first two measures once again, and then third and fourth measure once again, and then the music turns into a coda according to Koska. I would label this section as closing section, because this is not enough thematic material. It is only a confirmation of the tonality. But there are more degrees, secondary degrees. Maybe because of this, it is more appropriate to label it as coda. But still, I would label that as closing section. Let's listen to the movement. The sonata rondo is distinguished from the 7-part rondo by the development of earlier material in the C section. That form resembles a sonata with an extra return of the primary theme, which is A, after the exposition and another after the recapitulation. That means this is something between sonata and rondo. There are similarities to both forms. So the 7-part rondo is A, B, A, C, A, B, A, the most common variant. And the difference is that this part develops material from the earlier section. This is an elaborated section. But in the 7-part rondo, this is just a section, an individual section as A section or B section. The difference between sonata and rondo is, in the sonata we have primary theme, secondary theme, and then a development. And in the recapitulation we have once again primary theme and secondary theme. In the sonata rondo we have A part, B part. This is the B part corresponds to the secondary theme, and then A part again, and then a development. Once again A part, B part, and A part again. This is the difference between sonata form and sonata rondo form. This is the diagram of sonata rondo form taken from the Complete Musician by Stephen Leitz. And you see A, the first A, that means first tonal area, transition between them, B, the first B, this is the second tonal area, and then A, the second appearance of A. And I will explain what that means, the question mark. Then we have the development section. It could be anything. It is expanded, and then retransition, and once again A, B, A, and everything is on tonic. This is a characteristic, this unclarity of the tonality of A, and also the border are unclear. We will see an example in which we couldn't be sure where the A section, the second A section ends and development begins. This is also a characteristic of sonata rondo form, the unclarity of this part. Otherwise, it would be maybe too similar to 7-part rondo. And without A, it would be too similar to sonata form. And the unclear second A is a characteristic feature of sonata rondo form. This is an example of sonata rondo. Let's examine the structure. The key is D major, and the piece begins as expected with the A section. So we have a characteristic melodic material which ends here. We have our first cadence here. This is a perfect authentic cadence in D major. After that, after A section, we expect usually the transition part, but this is not a transition because it doesn't modulate. It continues in D major until that point. And after that, it starts D major, and you see it starts to modulate. It modulates to A major and ends with a half cadence in A major, which is a characteristic of transition. This is a transition. This part is a modulating transition. And after that, our first episode, the B part, the B section starts in A major in the secondary key. So this part, we could include this part to the A section, but because we have a clear cadence here and a clear ending, we have to call it something else. Stephen Leitz calls it suffix. Suffix. This is refrain, and this is suffix of refrain. And the suffix ends here, and after that, the transition part begins. And then B part in A major, and it continues 16 measures and ends here. And there's an elision. This is the end with perfect authentic cadence in A major, 5-1. And here starts something interesting. This is the closing section. You will hear it sounds exactly like a closing section with confirmation of the key. You see codettas, the same ideas, the same structures again and again. This is exactly like a closing section, and we expect a perfect authentic cadence, and after that a development section like in the sonata form. But at that point we have something like a transition, and it ends with 5-7 in D major. This is interesting because the exposition ends in the secondary key, but it returns back from A major to D major, ends with a half cadence, or interrupts after the dominant of D major, and then we get the A part again. So, and everything is the same. And we have also the suffix of A part and suffix, but if you remember the suffix, or let me remind you, the suffix after the first A, it begins in D major and it continues in D major and it ends in D major. The suffix ends in D major, but after the third appearance of A, which starts here in measure 87 with an Auftakt, we get the suffix again, but it doesn't continue in D major, it modulates. It starts modulates, and this is confusing part. Then should we call it development? Or we see a thematic change, a real thematic change in another key, an interruption with an interruption here. Should we call this part a development? This is, I think there's no correct or wrong answers. This is a characteristic of sonata rondo form. So, and then the development begins, and we will encounter similar thematic material, but most importantly, there are some characteristics of development section. There are sequences, there are modulations, and there is no thematic unity. This is the most important feature maybe. There is no thematic unity. There are only some fragments of melodic fragments. And still some similarities. For example, this figure here, it is very similar to the transition figure here, rapapapaparam, and in the development also we see ratatatatam pam. So, and some figurations, and also the same melodic material. Texture is different. There are kind of contrapuntal textures sometimes. And this is clearly the suffix part of A section. Notice the motifs, that one, for example, this is the characteristic motif with embellishments, and we find those motifs here in the suffix of A section, and this motif, and also the embellishments. And after that, we have an intersection here in andante tempo, and this is cadenza, like a cadenza, or a real cadenza actually, with many changes, tempo changes, and this is the recapitulation, the reappearance of A in D major. But this time there is no suffix. The A section ends here. And there's no suffix, only transition. And this time it doesn't modulate because we have the B part also in D major. And it continues and it ends here. And after that, once again with elision, the closing section begins. And once again, it sounds really like a closing section, and it seems it ends here, but it doesn't. There's a transition, and we have the fourth appearance of A, also in D major. At this time with suffix, here begins the suffix with an interruption, it continues and ends here. Then we have an addition. Stephen Leitz called it cadential tag, and this was an example of sonata rondo form. Let's listen to the movement. This is an example of 5-part rondo form. Let's examine the structure first. Our key is C major and the piece begins with A section as usual. We could ask ourselves if this part could be the B part. The answer should be no, because we are still in C major. This is the dominant of C major, and we will see. Then we have again the first part here. That means this is either ternary or rounded binary form. Because the first part ends with a perfect authentic cadence in C major, this is a sectional. To reprise, we have the entire A section again here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It would be ternary according to Stephen Koska, but according to Stephen Lace, it would be rounded binary because we are still in C major in the middle section. I find this explanation more convenient because the key should be our primary concern always in the analysis. So, and the A part ends here with a perfect authentic cadence in C major, and B part begins here in G major as expected and as you can understand from accidental F sharp. So, and it ends here actually with a perfect authentic cadence in G major. And after that we have a back modulation, a modulatory retransition. Let's call it transition. It modulates back to C major. And then we have here the A part again in C major. But this time only the first part of A section, not the second part. It doesn't matter if we could recognize the A part, and if it has a clear ending, then we call it A prime or A2, the second appearance of A. This differs from book to book. You could use whatever you want. And as I said, the C section is the most contrasting section in the rondo form. And you see it is in minor mode now. It is in C minor. And it ends, actually it is only 8 measure long, and it ends here after the reprise with the second ending. And here we have a modulatory section. Modulatory because the C part begins in C minor, but it doesn't end in C minor. It ends in E flat major with a perfect authentic cadence in E flat major, in the relative major of C minor. And then we have a transition, a back transition or a retransition, and here we have the A part again, A double prime or A3 in some books, in C major, and without repeat sign, without reprise, also not a written out reprise. This is the second part of A section, and it ends here. We get the A part, the first part of A section again with variation, which ends here. And after that, with an elision, we have a cadential tag according to Stephen Leitz, or a codetta. Let's listen to the movement. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.